Hi guys, welcome back to Mentour, yet another video podcast. It's great to see you all here. All of you new joiners, very welcome to the channel. I hope that you will enjoy the content. So today I'm going to continue with my series about failure management and how we pilots deal with different kinds of failures, malfunctions, or just incidents during our daily jobs, okay? So what I'm going to talk about today is pilot incapacitation. So the first thing is, what is pilot incapacitation? Well, pilot incapacitation can be a lot of things. It's basically the what happens when a pilot is not able to perform his or her duties in a satisfactory manner. So it can be going for anything from subtle incapacitation to partial incapacitation to total incapacitation. It's ranging from the pilot basically maybe having stomach problems, having to run to the toilet all the time, not being able to do what he or she is supposed to be doing, which would not really be incapacitation, but it would just be that they can't really, perform the duties, which would not be a very serious thing. You would just hand over the control to the other pilot and focus on getting yourself better and then getting yourself off when you get down onto the ground. Until what we're going to talk about today, which is total incapacitation, which is a completely different matter. Okay, so I want to start by saying that all pilots do training with this. Okay, we both the first officer and the captain is completely able to fly the aircraft that they're flying by themselves if they would need to. So as seen from a passenger perspective, it's not really a dangerous thing. It's just something that, as with anything, when we have two essential systems and one of them breaks down, in this case it's the pilot, we always want to get the aircraft down on the ground as quickly and safely as possible to make sure that we restore the level of redundancy that we want. Okay, so it's not like if the captain would suddenly get a heart attack and die that you're in mortal danger. That's not the case. The first officers will not be released to fly on the line until they are sufficiently trained and that the line trainers are really confident that they can handle the aircraft by themselves, get it down into a safe landing. So that's the first thing I want to say. Okay. Second of all, how do we actually deal with this? Well, first of all, incapacitation is a bit tricky because you have to find it out first. I mean, it might be obvious. Your colleague might suddenly get a heart attack and just slump over the controls. That will be an obvious incapacitation, and those are, believe it or not, easier to deal with because you now have a really set role. Okay, you know that your colleague is out, so you are going to have to take control and get the aircraft down on the ground. The more problematic is the subtle incapacitation, and that's where your colleague is inputting into the controls. They might be responding to your call outs and your prompts, but they're not responding or doing things that they should be doing. And that's subtle incapacitation. They might be under an enormous amount of stress, for example, from their home life, or they might not be feeling well, but they're not telling you that they're not feeling well. So you will find it out by them not doing their job properly. And that's really tricky. I'm not going to go too deeply into that, but what we try to follow is the Col Rule, which means that if you call for something which is supposed to get a response, you do it once, you call for flap 1, and you await the response from your colleague. If he or she does not respond, you make another call, flap 1, and you look at them. See how they're looking. If you're still not getting a response then you've made 2 calls and you can start to expect incapacitation. Okay, that's how we do it. That's how we find it out. And then of course you step it up and you ask your colleague, so how are you doing? Are you feeling well? Things like that, just like you would in normal life. But that's how it all starts anyway. So what I'm going to give you an example of today is total incapacitation, where one of the pilots just ceased to function for whatever reason. So the first thing that the remaining pilot really has to do is fly the aircraft. As with anything, and you'll see this as a kind of a red thread going through all of these failure management videos, the pilot flying, or the remaining pilot in this case, have to fly the aircraft first. This is paramount. It's really, really important that the remaining pilot does not get preoccupied with trying to figure out what's wrong and let the aircraft fly away by itself. The first thing that you would do as part of flying the aircraft is make sure that the pilot, who is now slumped together in his seat or her seat, hasn't touched any controls, buttons or anything. So you verify that the autopilot is engaged, that you are in the modes that you're expecting it to be, and that there's no inputs on rudders or thrust levers or anything like that. So that's the first thing. Once you have that under control, then try to wake the person up. Try to check, what kind of vital signs do you have. If you don't have any, or if the remaining, or the pilot who's incapacitated is not giving any signs of responding to you in any way, then it's definitely an incapacitation and you have to make a mayday call. Okay. Now, this is important as well. When you make the mayday call, make sure that you state clearly to air traffic control that it's a mayday because of pilot incapacitation. Do not mix that up with medical emergency, because medical emergency will be handled differently. A pilot incapacitation, ATC will know that that is now only one remaining pilot to fly the aircraft, and they will prioritize it differently. If you call for a medical emergency, they will think that one of the passengers are feeling ill and they will start preparing for that, but they will not foresee any immediate danger to the aircraft. Okay. But pilot incapacitation is different, so make sure that you state that it's a mayday call and it's because of pilot incapacitation. Okay. So now you have the aircraft under control, you've called mayday, it's time to try to help your colleague. So you want to get the flight attendants to come in and do their pilot incapacitation drill, because in all airlines the cabin crew would have been trained to deal with pilot incapacitation. They have specific drills that they will follow, do specific steps. So in order for that to start, you have to get their attention. Now, this is different in different airlines. What we do in my current airline is that we have to give them a visual call and an oral call. So what we do is we press the cabin attendant call button, and we call number 1 to the flight deck. That is a call that will alert them that something is going on. So number 1 will stop with whatever they're doing, the number 1 is the purser, and go up and take the interphone up and listen. Okay, say number 1 is standing by. So in this case, the remaining pilot would then state that we have pilot incapacitation, and state that very clearly, because that will then start them thinking about the pilot incapacitation drill, and ask for whatever procedure you have in force in order to open the door, because it's really important that you still maintain the security rules here. So the cabin attendant have to give you whatever kind of procedure you have in order for you to make sure that it's safe to open the flight deck door. And when he or she does, then you can open the door and let them in, and they will start their pilot incapacitation drill. And that will include things like administering oxygen, checking for vital signs, and if there's no vital signs, it's very likely that they will take the pilot out into the galley to try to resuscitate him or her, or call for a medically qualified person to try to get some help. All right. So let's say that is the scenario. So the cabin attendants have done their pilot incapacitation drill. They have removed the pilot out of his or her seat and taken it into the galley. Okay. Now, very important is that you still have one cabin crew remaining in the flight deck. So we always want one cabin crew in there so that you're not sitting by yourself. Why is this important? It's important for many reasons, but the main reason is that the cabin attendant that will be remaining in the flight deck with you is checking so that nothing is happening to you. Okay? We don't know what happened to your colleague, so we want to make sure that that does not happen to you as well, because you are now the remaining link to get the aircraft down onto the ground safely. So that's one. The other one is we want them to call and read checklists on your command. They have been trained to do so. They might not know what the checklist responses are supposed to be, but they know that they're supposed to read checklists. And this is important because and I'm going to get back to this, you want to make sure that you stay within the normal scope of operation and as much as possible. Because it's not going to feel normal for you to sit by yourself in whatever airliner that you're flying. You are used to, and all your training has been done with another pilot next to you doing challenge and responses. Now all of a sudden you're sitting by yourself, and that's not going to feel very good. So the cabin attendant is now going to sit, is not going to sit in the pilot seat, they're going to sit on the jump seat behind, and they're going to expect to be called to read checklists. So what I would suggest is you give the checklist that you're going to use to them. The normal checklists are normally found in the QRH. So you can give the QRH checklist to them, point out this is the checklist I want you to read when I call for it, and tell them so that they will have something to do, because they are going to be fairly nervous at this point anyway. Okay, so but at least you'll have some kind of normality going on. Okay, so now you're sitting there, the flight attendant is sitting behind you. You need to make a plan. Okay, ATC is informed. They know that you have a Mayday, so they will want to know where you're going. So now it's time to start to make a plan. Okay, you look for whatever airport is close by, and by close by I don't mean right below you, because you're going to need some distance in order to descend. A good rule of thumb is you need about 3 times your altitude plus about 1 mile per 10 knots to decelerate. So if you're flying at 30,000 feet, you're going to need 90 miles plus approximately 5 or 6 miles to decelerate. So around 100 miles, it's probably a good rule of thumb. Within 100 miles sector, you can find airports. And I would suggest that you try to find an airport that you've been to before if possible, because familiarity is going to be on your side when it comes to this. So try to find an airport. Now use air traffic control to your full need. Okay, they are there to help you. So don't worry about trying to find weather or things like that of 80s, Volmets or anything like that. Just tell air traffic control that I need runway in use and weather for this airport. And they will find that out for you, because you are in a Mayday situation, they're there to help you. So they're going to give you this. You start planning for it, you start descending, and I want you to do this in an expeditious manner, but not in a rushed manner. So what I mean by that is that we want to get the aircraft down on the ground to get some medical attention to your colleague, but the main safety of the aircraft and all the 100 and whatever passenger that you have behind you is still paramount. So you want to make sure that you're descending down towards this airport, but that you're not rushing it so that you'll screw something up. It's really, really important, okay? So you're now descending, telling ATC that I want to descend towards this airport. I want radar vectors, nothing complicated, as easy as possible. Tell them that you need all the help you can get. While you are now descending down towards that airport, you will have to start setting up for the approach, for example. But also you will have to tell your cabin crew what's going on, because remember, your cabin crew has been told, when you give them your NITS, which it's called, NITS stands for nature, intention, time and special procedures. So they have just been informed at this stage that you have pilot incapacitation and they're doing their drill. But the next stage is to tell them what's actually going to happen. So this is where you need to do your NITS drill. It might be called something else in different airline. NITS is what's called in my airline. And so you have to call the number 1 again. So once again, cabin attendant call button, number 1 to the flight deck, and tell them, okay, are you ready for your NITS brief? And you tell them in a very calm and precise manner. So I'm going to give you NITS, please listen carefully. Nature, as you know, we have pilot incapacitation. Intention, I'm going to divert the aircraft to this airport. Time, you get that off the FMC, more or less. It's going to take us about 20 minutes to reach. Special procedures, I want you to treat the colleague as best as you can. Make sure that you've made a call for medically qualified personnel, and make sure that when we land that the passengers remain seated until the medical personnel can come on board and help the colleague. Okay, I'm going to make a PA. Now, this is really important, especially if your colleague has been taken out into the galley. You have to make a PA to the passengers, because they are likely to see that there's a pilot there on the floor that's being resuscitated, and that's not going to feel very good for any passengers looking at it. So what they want to hear is the voice of the remaining pilot. So you make a PA, take a deep breath, and make a nice, slow and calming PA saying that we are going to divert to this place to give some medical attention to one of my colleagues, and I want you to listen to my cabin crew and follow their instructions. I will have you on the ground in about 20 to 25 minutes, and I will give you more information about your ongoing travels from there on. It's quite a good trick to tell them about ongoing travels, because it gives them something else to think about. So they suddenly start thinking about, oh shit, yeah, I'm going to be delayed now. I wonder if Uncle Bernard can come and get me or whatever. So you project there that you have this under control so much that you're actually thinking about their ongoing travel as well. Okay, so you want to project a good, safe image to the passengers to calm them down. Now, when you continue, you've done your NITs, you've now done your PA to the passengers, you want to set up for the approach. And the way to do this is I want you to do an approach briefing just like the remaining pilot was still sitting in his or her seat. So you set the aircraft up, courses, nav aids, FMC, anything that needs to be set up, and then you give a full brief. Why is this important? Well, this is important because this is what we always do, and the more you stick to normal procedures, the more you stick to what's normal to you, the less you are going to miss. If you would go quiet and try to do this all in your head, I can guarantee you that you would miss important steps. One of them, for example, that you will catch by doing the approach briefing is you will set the minima up on your colleague's side as well. And in the 737, if you haven't set the minima selector on the captain's side, you will get the minimums call to whatever altitude is set on the captain's side. So if he or she has the minimum flap retraction altitude set from the previous departure, that's when you are going to get your minimums call on the approach. So do the briefing, brief like the other pilot was sitting there, set everything up, and then go in for the approach. Now, as I said before, don't rush the approach. Keep it up, keep the speed up, keep the pace up, but don't rush it, because you don't want to end up in a single pilot go around, okay? You want to get it down on the ground. Use an ILS, use the autopilot to its maximum capability. I personally would not recommend you to do an autoland. You can do an autoland, but remember, the autoland procedure is something that we have been trained with 2 pilots, and generally, especially if you're the first officer, you would never have landed from the right seat with an autoland. And now, as I said before, I want you to keep this as standard as possible. That's what you're used to, and you're trained to fly and land the aircraft manually. I would probably recommend you to do that. It's up to you. You can use the autoland if you want. Okay. If you're really shit hot and remember it, you can start the APU as well during the approach phase. That's good, because then you will be able to put some electrical sources on once you've landed to shut down the engines and let the medical personnel approach the aircraft. But if you forget, it doesn't really matter. You can just shut down the engine on the side where the ambulance is coming. If you're flying the 737, this is different in different configurations. Some 737s you can taxi the aircraft from both the left and the right seat. In some you can't. If you can't, we don't want you to change seats. Never. You're sitting in the seat that you've been trained in. But just tell ATC that you will not be able to vacate the runway once you have landed, because you can't taxi the aircraft. So you will continue to fly the aircraft in. Use the cabin attendant to call for checklists, and they will stay in the cockpit for the remainder of the flight. Configure the aircraft, and once again, when you're configuring the aircraft now, I want you to do both roles, okay? Like you were both pilot monitoring and pilot flying. So, for example, taking flaps, you will call flaps 1, and then you check the speed to make sure that you are in the correct speed to extend flaps 1, and you will say speed checks flaps 1, flaps 5 speed checks flaps 5. Do all of that. gear down, flap 15, landing checklist down to flaps. So the gear down, speed checks, flap 15, and can you please do the landing checklist to the cabin crew? So you're doing this to maintain the normality all the time. The closer you are to what you normally do every day, the more likely it is for the successful outcome. Okay. Get yourself stabilized early, get yourself configured early, but not too early. Go down, make a nice landing, stop the aircraft, and once the aircraft is stopped, you set the parking brake. If you have remembered to put the APU on, you can switch the APU on to the electrical buses. Tell ATC that you'll be staying on the runway and that the ambulance can approach the aircraft, and you can shut the engines down. And once you've shut them down, I want you to make a PA. Tell the passengers to remain in their seats. They will get more information in a while, but wait until the ambulance personnel is on board and have taken care of your colleague. Right? Good. So that's pretty much it. Afterwards, pull the CVR circuit breaker. The reason for this is that this is a serious incident, so it's going to be an investigation into it. So it's good if you retain the CVR data. And the only way to do that is to pull the CVR circuit breaker, which is located behind the captain's side on the P18 pylon panel. Okay. And after that, you are just going to have to, as the remaining pilot is going to be the pilot in command, so you will have to liaise with the ground crew, possibly being towed into the gate, liaise with cabin crew to see what we're going to do with the passengers, call the company to let the company know what's going on, and so on. And remember to try to, while the memory is fresh, to take some notes as well, because you are going to have to write a safety report about this. So that's pretty much it. I know this is a fairly long podcast. I hope it has been helpful. There might be some more points in here as well, but this is what I can remember now just at the top of my head. So guys, once again, it's great to see you all here. I hope you're enjoying the content on the channel. Please let me know what else you want me to talk about. There will be more content like this about different kind of scenarios coming up. Please share whatever video that you like on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Make sure that you follow the channel, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.